5 symptoms. You're sleeping or trying to sleep, but you wake up unrefreshed no matter how many hours you get. Now, before I go any further, if unrefreshed sleep is your dominant symptom and you haven't been evaluated for sleep apnea, that evaluation comes first. The sleep apnea presents in women in their 40s. It looks completely different from the snoring stereotype. It shows up as insomnia, fatigue, mood, um, and morning headaches. Yeah, and it gets missed, okay, routinely. If that's your picture, I need you to get that ruled out before attributing it to minerals, okay? So today's conversation is for women who've had a clean workup and are still hitting a wall. Your legs cramp at night, sometimes badly enough to wake you. You're anxious, not about anything specific, just a low hum of anxiety that lives in your chest. Okay, I was gonna say heart, but in your chest. Your heart sometimes races when you're lying completely still. If palpitations are frequent, prolonged, or come with shortness of breath or chest tightness, please have those evaluated by your doctor before anything else. What I'm describing today is the low level, pattern based racing heart that shows up as part of a broader mineral and stress picture. It is not it is not a replacement for a cardiac workup. And I mean that, y'all. Okay. And you probably crave salt, not sugar, not chocolate, salt. Sometimes intensely, sometimes with no idea why. You're just like, I need something salty. 5 symptoms. And if you talk to your doctor about any of them, they were probably treated as 5 separate problems. Sleep hygiene, stretching, anxiety management, heart monitoring, electrolytes. But here's what none of those conversations connected. All 5 of those symptoms have the same root cause. They're all mineral symptoms. And if you're in perimenopause or menopause and you're under any level of chronic stress, which is almost every woman watching this, I'm sure, your body is actively depleting these minerals faster than food can replace them. But here's the part that surprised even my most seasoned clients. The depletion doesn't just cause symptoms. The depletion removes the one thing that could slow the depletion down. So today I'm going to show you the exact loop, which minerals go first, what that creates downstream in your body, why standard lab panels consistently miss it, why cortisol is the upstream driver that almost no protocol addresses, and the fastest way to start restoring your mineral foundation through food. So by the end of this video, you will understand why the exhaustion just doesn't seem to go away and what it's actually asking for. Okay, so let's go. Welcome to Wind Down Wednesday. Let's start with cortisol because cortisol is the mechanism. Cortisol is not bad. It is not a bad hormone. I need you to hear that first. Cortisol is a steroid hormone made in your adrenal cortex, and it is essential. It regulates your blood sugar. It manages inflammation. It wakes you up in the morning. It helps you respond to anything your body perceives as threat, whether it's physical, emotional, or otherwise. Okay. Now, here's the problem. Your body doesn't distinguish between being chased by something dangerous and being a woman in perimenopause, managing a demanding job, a household, possibly aging parents, possibly teenagers, a body that feels different than it used to, and a medical system that frequently dismisses what you're describing. I've been there, okay? That's chronic, low grade, unrelenting stress. And chronic stress means chronic cortisol output. Now, here's where the minerals come in. When cortisol is produced and released, it uses magnesium. And when your body is under stress and cortisol is elevated, your kidneys, and this is the critical piece, your kidneys actively excrete magnesium. They dump it. It doesn't build up, it goes out. So chronic stress means chronic magnesium loss. But here's where it becomes a loop rather than just a depletion problem. Magnesium is one of the primary buffers on your stress response. When magnesium levels are adequate, your nervous system has a natural brake on cortisol output. When magnesium drops, that brake weakens. Your nervous system becomes more reactive, which means more cortisol, which means more magnesium excreted, which means the brake weakens further. This is the cortisol-mineral loop. And once you're in it, just relaxing more doesn't stop it. Taking magnesium supplements in isolation doesn't stop it. You have to interrupt the loop at multiple points simultaneously, and that starts with understanding what's being depleted and in what order. Now, before I walk you through the minerals themselves, I want to address two questions I know are forming in your mind. Because if you've ever had blood work done and been told everything looks normal, you're probably wondering, if this is real, why didn't my labs catch it? And then behind that question is a bigger one. If cortisol is the driver, why has every protocol I've tried only addressed the symptoms? Listen, those are exactly the right questions, so let's answer them, okay? This is one of the most important conversations I've had with clients, and it almost never happens in a standard medical appointment. And I'm saying this from experience from working in several over the years, and I mean years. When your doctor runs a mineral panel, they're most commonly measuring serum levels, meaning the concentration of minerals in your blood plasma. And here is the problem with that. Only about 1% of your body's total magnesium is in the blood. The other 99% is inside your cells. So when a standard serum magnesium test comes back normal, what that actually tells you is that the 1% circulating in your blood plasma looks fine. It tells you nothing about whether your cells, your heart cells, your muscle cells, your neurons have adequate magnesium. Your body will shift magnesium from intracellular stores and reduce renal reabsorption to hold serum levels stable within a narrow range. It's a triage response. The serum number holds, the intracellular picture deteriorates. And the symptoms, the cramps, the anxiety, the poor sleep, the palpitations are the intracellular picture talking. Okay. Now, here's a side note. Red blood cell magnesium testing is more reflective of intracellular status than serum magnesium, and it is available through most major labs, including Quest and LabCorp. It can be requested from your primary care provider, or in many states, it can be ordered directly without a practitioner. It is not routinely included in standard panels. You have to ask for it specifically. Even red blood cell magnesium is an imperfect proxy for all tissue magnesium status, but it is meaningfully better than serum alone. Now, the symptom picture often leads to lab values regardless of which test is used. Now, as for zinc, same issue, different mechanism, okay? Plasma zinc also correlates poorly with intracellular zinc stores. Under any inflammatory or stress load, zinc is redistributed as part of the acute phase response, meaning plasma levels can look adequate while cellular reserves are running low. Because zinc is distributed across so many systems simultaneously, immune function, gut integrity, thyroid conversion, skin repair, the depletion shows up as a scatter of seemingly unrelated symptoms rather than one obvious marker. Potassium is tightly regulated in serum because serum potassium dysregulation is immediately dangerous for cardiac function. Your body will sacrifice intracellular potassium stores to keep serum levels within a normal range. The serum number can look normal right up until the intracellular depletion is significant. Okay, that's important. Standard cortisol testing, when it's run at all, okay, is typically a single morning blood draw. Now, what matters clinically in perimenopause and menopause is not just the absolute morning value, it's the shape of the diurnal curve. Is cortisol elevated at night when it should be low? Is the cortisol awakening response blunted? A single morning draw captures neither of those patterns. Okay, so it's important to know. Now, a quick side note though, 4-point salivary cortisol or Dutch dried urine test for comprehensive hormones. That testing provides a more complete picture of the cortisol diurnal curve and metabolites. Dutch testing requires a functional medicine or integrative practitioner to order and interpret, and it typically runs approximately around $300 to $450 out of pocket. It is not covered by standard insurance, but it is a deeper clinical tool, not a first step. 4-point salivary cortisol is more accessible and less expensive. So bring either up with a practitioner who works specifically with hormones. Okay, I wanted to just share that quick side note with you. So when I say your labs are normal, I mean your serum snapshot at one point in time of the 1% of your body that circulates in blood is within a reference range built on population averages. That is a different statement from saying your cellular mineral status and your cortisol pattern are healthy. Okay? The clinical picture, y'all, your symptoms is often ahead of the lab values. Okay? Now, that's not a failure of the medical system, it's a limitation of the tools. And it's why learning to read your body signals as data is not alternative medicine, it's clinical intelligence your standard panel cannot give you. Okay? So important, y'all. So here's a question I've asked hundreds of women. How many supplements are you taking right now? The answer is usually between 4 and 12, somewhere within that range. And then the follow-up question I ask them after I get that answer, has the picture significantly improved? Almost always, y'all, the answer is not really. This is the supplement graveyard problem. And it's not because supplements don't work. I want to make sure I stress that. It's because most protocols address the depletion without addressing the driver of the depletion. I want you to think of it this way. If you have a bucket with a hole in the bottom and someone keeps telling you to add more water, better water, cleaner water, filtered water, without ever addressing the hole, the bucket stays empty. Restoring magnesium without addressing why the body is depleting it is the same problem. You're refilling a depleted system while the stress physiology driving the depletion continues uninterrupted. Now, is this making sense? I hope so. Cortisol is the hole in the bucket, and cortisol is upstream of virtually everything else that's going wrong in the perimenopause menopause picture. Listen, high chronic cortisol suppresses the conversion of T4, which is the inactive thyroid hormone your thyroid produces, to T3, which is the active form that your cells actually use. Now, listen, y'all, this is well documented. Glucocorticoids suppress deionidase enzyme activity, impairing the T4 to T3 conversion step and increasing the production of reverse T3, which blocks T3 receptor sites. This is why T3 downregulated women can have normal TSH and normal T4 on standard panels, but feel every symptom of hypothyroidism. The thyroid gland is doing its job. The conversion pathway is the problem. Cortisol is a primary reason why. Cortisol is a glucocorticoid. Its job, in part, is to raise blood glucose to fuel your stress response. Under chronic stress, cortisol chronically elevates blood sugar, which drives chronic insulin secretion, which drives insulin resistance over time. That is the insulin inflamed pattern, and cortisol is upstream of it. You can optimize your diet for blood sugar indefinitely. If the cortisol driver is not addressed, you are working against a sustained physiological signal. Now, this is the one, y'all, that tends to land hard. Cortisol and progesterone are both downstream of the same precursor, pregnenolone, okay? Under chronic stress, the body prioritizes cortisol synthesis, and the clinical outcome is well documented. Progesterone levels fall in direct proportion to how sustained the cortisol load is. The term pregnenolone steal describes a proposed model for this mechanism. Now, while the clinical outcome, chronic stress reducing progesterone, is well supported, the precise molecular mechanism is still being characterized in the research literature. Some researchers argue the competitive substrate framing is an oversimplification and that ACTH-driven changes in enzyme expression and adrenal receptor dynamics are more explanatory. The prevailing functional medicine model here is called the pregnenolone steal. And while the exact molecular detail is still being worked out in the research, the clinical outcome is not in dispute. Chronic cortisol load and falling progesterone track together in perimenopause, and the cortisol progesterone relationship is a central part of why. Less progesterone means less of the hormone that balances estrogen, calms the nervous system, supports sleep, and stabilizes mood. And because cortisol can also interact with progesterone receptor signaling, even the progesterone that is produced may have a harder time signaling effectively. So cortisol doesn't just waste minerals, it actively disrupts thyroid conversion, blood sugar regulation, and the progesterone estrogen balance that is at the center of the perimenopause experience, right? This is why the tri-shift method sequences nervous system first, before rhythm, before nourishment. Listen, if you don't reduce the cortisol drive at the nervous system level, the mineral restoration that we're talking about today is slower and it is less complete. The sequence is the strategy. Some protocols skip directly to the nutrient, or they go straight to the hormone, or they optimize the diet. Now, all of those things matter. Don't get me wrong. But without addressing the cortisol upstream, you are adding water to a bucket with a hole in it and calling it a nutrition problem when it is actually a physiology problem. Okay? All right. Now that you understand the mechanism and why your labs probably missed it and why the protocols you've tried address the downstream without the upstream, let's talk about what's actually being depleted and in what order. Okay. I think you're going to find this conversation very interesting. Now, before I go into the minerals, y'all, a quick note. Everything I'm about to walk you through, which minerals, which downstream effects, which foods, it lands differently depending on your archetype. And I know you guys heard me say this over and over and over again. Your archetype tells you where your body is most vulnerable in this loop. Now, there is a quiz in the description below. Listen, it takes about 3 minutes. I want you to take it after this video, and then I want you to come back, because the second half of this conversation is going to make a lot more sense when you know your pattern. It's so important. Please take the quiz so the rest can make sense. Okay? But before I go into the minerals, y'all, one clinical caveat your practitioner would want you to hear. Okay? If you are currently taking a proton pump inhibitor, omeprazole, pantoprazole, any PPI for reflux, know that PPI significantly impair magnesium absorption over time. The FDA issued a safety communication on this. You can eat all the spinach and pumpkin seeds in the world and be working uphill because of the medication. So I want you to make sure you know that. All right. It's a side note. Also, if you are on diuretics, what's the name of hydrochlorothiazide, furosemide, any water pill, these actively deplete both potassium and magnesium. The minerals I'm describing today are being removed by your medication as a side effect. If you're on metformin for blood sugar or insulin resistance, metformin depletes B12 and can affect zinc over time. Okay, so hopefully you took note of that. Now, if you're still on oral contraceptives, OCPs deplete B6, B12, zinc, and magnesium, all 4 minerals that we're covering today. Now, none of this means don't start with food. It means loop in whoever prescribes those medications before adding supplements on top of that picture. And it means the restoration timeline may be longer than it would be otherwise. Okay. All right. I got that out the way. So I'm going to walk you through 5 minerals in priority order. The order in which chronic stress tends to deplete them, and therefore the order in which restoring them matters. Okay. All right. Number 1, magnesium. Magnesium goes first and it goes fastest. Now, we talked about the mechanism. Cortisol drives kidney excretion, but I want you to understand how magnesium is involved in your body, because it makes the depletion feel very personal very quickly. Now, magnesium is involved in over 300 enzymatic reactions in the human body. 300. That includes protein synthesis, nerve function, blood glucose regulation, and critically for perimenopausal women, muscle relaxation, including the smooth muscle of your blood vessels and the cardiac muscle of your heart. Depletion symptoms could look anything like muscle cramps and twitches, especially at night, poor sleep quality, specifically difficulty staying asleep, anxiety with no identifiable cause, heart palpitations, constipation, tension headaches that's clustered at the base of your skull. If you counted 3 or more, listen, that is a magnesium picture. Okay. Number 2 is zinc. Zinc is second to go. Zinc and cortisol have a very complicated relationship. Under acute stress, cortisol and inflammatory cytokines trigger zinc redistribution as part of the acute phase response. The liver sequesters it through metallothionein upregulation, pulling it away from gut lining integrity, thyroid hormone conversion, immune surveillance, and skin repair. This is adaptive in the short term. Under chronic stress, it becomes a long-term drain. Some zinc depletion symptoms, y'all, include hair thinning, especially at the temples and the crown. Okay, slow wound healing, changes in taste or smell, frequent low-grade illness, and gut permeability, because zinc is one of the primary nutrients maintaining tight junction integrity in your intestinal lining. For those of you who know your archetype, T3 downregulated, zinc is a cofactor in T3 conversion. Estrobolome dysregulated, zinc depletion is a gut integrity story first for you. All right, number 3, potassium, third to go and often overlooked. Okay, cortisol dysregulates aldosterone, the hormone governing your sodium potassium balance. And when aldosterone is dysregulated, potassium is excreted. Symptoms are subtle until they're not, like fatigue and muscle weakness, salt cravings, blood pressure fluctuations, worsening PMS related water retention. Number 4 is B5, okay, the adrenal vitamin. B5 pantothenic acid is a substrate for coenzyme A, which your adrenal glands require to synthesize steroid hormones, including cortisol. True B5 deficiency is uncommon in adults eating varied diets, but under sustained stress, the demand for B5 increases and adequate intake becomes more important rather than less. Think of it not as a depletion loop, but as a higher demand nutrient during a high demand period. When B5 is insufficient for the load, you may notice fatigue that doesn't respond to sleep, loss of stress resilience, I used to be able to handle this type of feeling, right? And in some women, a kind of emotional flatness that's hard to name. Number 5 is sodium, the one that surprises people, okay? Chronically, especially combined with low sodium dietary advice, sodium depletion is real. What I'm about to describe applies to women with an otherwise clear workup, not as a reason to dismiss other causes, okay? A low sodium picture could be something like dizziness when standing. Now let me pause on that for a second. Dizziness when you stand up too fast has a number of causes: cardiovascular, neurological, medication side effects from diuretics, beta blockers, or antidepressants, and POTS, which is underdiagnosed in perimenopausal women. Now, if this is a persistent symptom, please have it evaluated. What I'm describing is the pattern in women who have had a clean workup and are running chronically low sodium alongside the other mineral depletions that we've covered. So I want to make that clear. I want to make sure I get that out, stress that for you, okay? Some other low sodium symptoms: brain fog, low blood pressure, afternoon headaches, and that washed out feeling that hits mid-afternoon, even when sleep has been adequate. Y'all, listen, and the nuance, this is not an argument for processed food, okay? It's an argument for not fearing mineral-rich salt, sea salt, Himalayan salt, with whole food meals. The mineral matrix in real salt is different from the refined sodium in packaged food. Now, if you have not taken the quiz yet, I want you to grab that from the link in the description. I want you to do that now, because what I'm about to walk you through is pattern specific. Okay? Listen, the same mineral depletion creates different downstream effects depending on your archetype. Most conversations about mineral depletion stop at the symptoms. They don't show you what the depletion is building at the system level. In perimenopause and menopause, y'all, that matters. It matters. Now let's start with magnesium and the 3 a.m. wake up. Magnesium is required for your body to maintain deep, restorative sleep architecture. When it drops, you cycle out of deep sleep more easily. Now, here's the mechanism for the 3 a.m. Waking specifically. In the early morning hours, blood sugar naturally begins to drift downward. In women with blood sugar instability, which overlaps significantly with mineral depletion, as we've established, that drop can become steep enough to trigger a counter-regulatory response. The body releases adrenaline and cortisol to raise blood sugar back up. That hormonal surge is what produces the sudden wakefulness, the racing heart, the inability to get back to sleep. The cortisol awakening response, CAR, cortisol awakening response, the natural cortisol surge that peaks 20 to 45 minutes after you wake up, is a separate phenomenon from the 3 a.m. waking. In women with HPA dysregulation, the nocturnal cortisol profile is also shifted. Cortisol doesn't stay low through the night the way it should, which lowers the threshold for this counter-regulatory response. Both mechanisms are operating. The blood sugar drop is the more direct trigger. The dysregulated nocturnal cortisol pattern is the amplifier. And in women with HPA dysregulation, which is most cortisol-wired women, the cortisol pattern through the night is already disrupted. So the threshold for that counter-regulatory response is lower. It's the blood sugar drop that strikes the match. The dysregulated cortisol is the accelerant. When zinc drops and gut permeability increases, bacterial products that belong in the gut begin to translocate into systemic circulation. That triggers a low-grade inflammatory response. That inflammation increases the activity of beta-glucuronidase, which is the enzyme that deconjugates estrogen in the gut and recirculates it. So, zinc depletion leads to gut permeability, which leads to more estrogen recirculation, which leads to the estrogen stuck and estrobolome dysregulated symptoms in some women, and it worsens. This is the gut hormone connection traced all the way back to the mineral level. Now, when we talk about archetype-specific downstream, with cortisol wired, the magnesium loop is your primary story. You're burning through it fastest because your baseline cortisol output is already high. Nervous system support is not optional for you. It is the prerequisite to everything else working. For those who are insulin inflamed, magnesium and chromium are both required for insulin sensitivity and glucose uptake. Stress depletes magnesium. Low magnesium amplifies blood sugar instability. This is why your cravings feel physiological rather than willpower related. They are. And this is the cortisol blood sugar insulin loop playing out in your body. For T3 downregulated women, mitochondrial function requires magnesium before it can effectively use selenium. If magnesium hasn't been restored first, selenium has a weaker substrate to work on. Sequence matters, and this is the clinical reason why. Now, estrogen stuck, y'all listen, B vitamins, particularly B6, B9, and B12, run your liver's methylation pathways, essential for phase 2 estrogen clearance. Chronic adrenal stress depletes B vitamins. Estrogen clearance slows. The progesterone decline from the cortisol-pregnenolone relationship is also feeding your estrogen-progesterone imbalance directly. Cortisol is not a side story for you. It is the story, okay? Now, the estrobolome dysregulated. Zinc and magnesium are your gut barrier minerals. When both are depleted, the estrobolome, the gut bacteria that regulate estrogen metabolism, loses structural support. You already know how sensitive your system is to anything that disrupts the gut. This is the mineral level explanation for why. Listen, if this is landing for you, if you just traced a symptom or a pattern you've been living with all the way back to the mineral level, I want you to hit that like button, okay? Please hit the like button. It is the most direct signal to YouTube that this information needs to reach more women like you. So I appreciate you in advance. Now, the most important principle before we go into specific foods, sequence matters. You can take all 5 of the minerals I just described simultaneously and get underwhelming results because some depend on others to be absorbed and used effectively. Magnesium goes first. It enables cellular uptake of other minerals and supports the nervous system stability that reduces the cortisol output, driving the whole loop. Everything else is more effective when magnesium is restored first. And this is a food conversation, not a supplement conversation. The whole food matrix, the cofactors, the forms, the way nutrients sit alongside each other in real food is the foundation. Food first. Magnesium, first priority. Dark leafy greens, spinach, and Swiss chard. A 2-cup serving of cooked spinach provides roughly 150 milligrams of magnesium. Pumpkin seeds, 1 ounce, delivers approximately 150 milligrams of magnesium alongside zinc and iron. They're a keystone food for this entire conversation. One food, multiple depletions covered. Dark chocolate at 85% or higher. An ounce delivers 60 to 65 milligrams. Not your primary source, but it is real. Black beans and avocado, both solid mid-range magnesium sources. Avocado covers magnesium, potassium, and B5 simultaneously, which is why it's the menopause mineral food. It's worth noting that soil depletion is real. The magnesium content of agricultural soil has declined significantly over the past 50 years. It is why this depletion is so widespread, regardless of dietary quality. So I think it is important for you to know that. When we talk about zinc, oysters by an enormous margin. If shellfish is not a concern for you, 6 oysters can deliver 30 plus milligrams of zinc, far exceeding any plant source. Red meat, particularly beef, is the most bioavailable non-shellfish source. Pumpkin seeds, again, which is why they appear repeatedly here, okay? Chickpeas and cashews are useful plant-based options, but an important note, phytates in legumes and seeds reduce zinc absorption a lot. So soaking and sprouting reduces phytate content. And regardless of preparation, animal source zinc is significantly more bioavailable than plant source zinc. If zinc is a primary concern for your archetype and you eat animal protein, lean on those sources first. Now, potassium, my favorite, sweet potato. A medium sweet potato delivers approximately 450 to 540 milligrams of potassium. Accessible, affordable, blood sugar stable when eaten with protein and fat. Avocados, approximately 690 milligrams per whole avocado. White beans is one of the highest sources-based protein sources, okay? Salmon, potassium alongside omega-3s and B12. Now with the banana, yes, it has potassium, but they raise blood sugar quickly. For insulin-inflamed women especially, you want to pair it with protein. B5, chicken liver is the most concentrated food source. Sunflower seeds, avocado, and mushrooms are accessible everyday options. Now remember, we're not treating B5 deficiency here. We are supporting adequate intake during a higher demand period. Now when we talk about sodium, mineral-rich salt, sea salt, Himalayan, Celtic, with whole food meals, olives, bone broth, and celery in a whole food context. Now, one important caveat here, if you have hypertension, chronic kidney disease, or heart failure, or if you're on a physician prescribed sodium restriction for any reason, This conversation happens with your doctor. Okay? All right? The sodium guidance today is for women without those conditions who have been following blanket sodium advice and are showing signs of depletion. Okay? Now, if you've been avoiding salt on general low sodium advice and you have the depletion pattern I described, dizziness, afternoon headaches, brain fog, low blood pressure, that is worth revisiting with your practitioner alongside the full clinical picture. Okay? Now, let me bring the whole picture together, y'all. Let me bring the whole picture together. Chronic stress drives cortisol output. Cortisol, as the upstream driver of thyroid conversion, blood sugar, and progesterone synthesis, is disrupting multiple systems simultaneously. It's also directly depleting magnesium through renal kidney excretion while removing the very mineral buffer that will slow the stress response, which drives more cortisol. Standard lab panels miss this because they're measuring the 1% of your mineral stores that circulates in blood, and because a single point cortisol draw cannot capture a pattern. Your symptoms are the clinical picture. Your symptoms are ahead of the labs, okay? So many protocols fail to resolve this because they address the depletion without addressing the cortisol driver. You restore the mineral, the cortisol continues. The mineral depletes again. The bucket has a hole in it. The tri-shift method sequences nervous system first for exactly this reason. Rhythm second, because cortisol has a circadian pattern that nutrition can only stabilize if that rhythm is in place. Nourishment third, because food first, mineral restoration lands in a body whose cortisol drive has been reduced, not one that's still running the depletion loop at full speed. In that order. Always. Okay? I want to thank you so much for joining me today for Wind Down Wednesday. Again, the link for the gut hormone pattern quiz is in the description below. I want to say, if you have questions, please feel free to drop them. Just drop them in the comment section below, and I will definitely get back and answer those for you. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I definitely look forward to hearing your feedback. And I will be back next week to talk with you more next Wednesday. Until then, have a wonderful evening. Take care.